And that's when I realized I had to take responsibility for my own mistakes. My sister Emma's voice carried across my parents' living room, warm and practiced. She sat in the armchair like it was a throne, 20 relatives hanging on her every word. It wasn't easy, but owning up to what I'd done taught me everything about integrity. I felt my coffee cup grow heavy in my hand. That mistake she was describing so eloquently. The one that taught her about integrity and personal growth. I took the blame for it. I was the one who faced the consequences while she walked away clean. My cousin Tyler leaned forward. That must have been so hard, Emma. But look at you now, such a success story. My mother beamed from across the room. My father nodded approvingly. Emma glowed under their praise, weaving my sacrifice into her personal narrative of triumph. Nobody looked at me. Nobody ever did. I opened my mouth to speak, to finally say something after 7 years of silence. Actually, that's not exactly. Natalie, don't start. My mother's voice cut through the room like a blade. We're having a nice family gathering. Please don't create drama. The room went quiet. Everyone stared at me like I'd just kicked a puppy. Emma's eyes met mine, wide and innocent, but I saw something flicker there. Recognition. Fear. My mother touched my arm later, near the kitchen. Don't ruin this for her, she whispered. My name is Natalie Foster, and I'm 31 years old. For most of my life, I've been known as the dependable daughter. The steady one. The one who doesn't make waves or demand attention. While Emma sparkled and stumbled and recovered, I absorbed the impact of her falls. I work as a financial analyst at Henderson & Associates downtown. It's a good job, stable, nothing glamorous. Emma calls it boring when she mentions it at all, which isn't often. She's a marketing director now at a boutique firm, the kind of place with exposed brick walls and a coffee bar that serves oat milk lattes. Standing in my parents' kitchen that afternoon, watching Emma accept congratulations for courage she never actually showed, I understood something clearly for the first time. This wasn't a new problem suddenly appearing. This was a pattern finally becoming impossible to ignore. The family gathering continued in the other room without me. I could hear Emma's laugh, bright and carefree. My father was telling the story of how proud they were when she turned her life around. The past had been rewritten so many times that even I sometimes forgot what actually happened. But I remembered now. I remembered the exact moment the lie started, and I remembered agreeing to it. Just this once, they'd said. It'll blow over, they'd promised. She's younger, she needs protection, they'd explained. I was 24. Emma was 22. Old enough to face consequences. 7 years ago, Emma worked as a junior accountant at Morrison & Fletcher, a respected firm downtown. She had big dreams of climbing the corporate ladder, of making our parents proud, of proving she could succeed. Then she made a mistake. Not a small one. She'd falsified expense reports, taking company money for personal purchases. Handbags, trips, restaurant bills that had nothing to do with business. The amount wasn't massive, maybe $8,000 over 6 months, but the betrayal was absolute. When the discrepancies were discovered, Emma panicked. She came to our parents' house in tears, terrified of criminal charges, of losing everything she'd worked for. I was there visiting when she arrived, mascara streaming down her face. They're going to press charges, she sobbed. I'll go to jail. I'll never work in finance again. My parents looked at each other with that silent communication couples develop over decades. Then they looked at me. Natalie works in finance too, my father said slowly. The companies have similar systems. My mother's hand found mine. You're established in your career. You could weather this storm. Emma's just starting out. Just this once, they both said. Please, Natalie. Save your sister. I was the one who contacted Morrison & Fletcher. I crafted the confession, claiming the oversight was mine during a consulting project I'd done for them months earlier. I offered full restitution plus damages. The firm, wanting to avoid scandal, accepted the settlement. Emma kept her job. I paid $8,000 I didn't have. The lie was born. After that, Emma's career flourished. She got promoted twice in 3 years. She moved to the boutique marketing firm with the impressive title and the corner office. She bought a condo in the trendy part of town and posted photos of her sunset view on social media. My career stalled. Not dramatically, nothing I could point to directly. But opportunities that should have come my way somehow didn't. A promotion went to someone less qualified. A major project was assigned to a colleague who'd started years after me. Then I heard the whispers. Someone had talked about that ethics issue from years ago. Somehow, the story of my confession at Morrison & Fletcher had leaked, transformed into something uglier with each retelling. I was the analyst who'd gotten greedy, who'd compromised her integrity for a few $1,000s. I couldn't correct it without exposing Emma. My parents reminded me of this frequently. "You made a choice," my father said when I mentioned the rumors affecting my work. "You can't take it back now without destroying your sister's reputation." Emma thrived in the version of history we'd created. At family gatherings, she talked about overcoming her early career challenges, about learning from mistakes she'd never actually made. She'd absorbed the experience of consequence without ever facing it, turning my sacrifice into her story of personal growth. I watched her build a life on a foundation of lies and told myself it was fine. She was happy. My parents were proud. The family was intact. But I was disappearing. The cost of being the strong one isn't always obvious. It's the opportunities you don't take because your reputation is already damaged. It's the friendships that cool when rumors reach them before truth does. It's the constant low-level anxiety that someone will ask questions you can't answer honestly. I lost touch with college friends who worked in finance. They'd heard versions of what happened at Morrison & Fletcher, and their messages became less frequent. Their invitations to networking events stopped coming. Professional relationships require trust, and I'd become someone with a question mark beside her name. My romantic life suffered too. I dated a man named Marcus for 8 months before he asked me directly about my past. "Someone at a conference mentioned you had some ethical issues early in your career," he said carefully. "I'm not judging, I just want to understand." I couldn't explain without revealing Emma's secret. I couldn't tell the truth without betraying my family. So I offered vague explanations that satisfied no one, including myself. Marcus eventually moved on, and I couldn't blame him. My mental health took a quiet toll. I developed insomnia, lying awake at night rehearsing conversations I could never have. I started declining family events where Emma's success would be celebrated, where I'd have to smile through stories of her integrity and growth. Then, last month, someone from my past reached out. Amanda Chen, a colleague from my early career days, sent a message through social media. "Hey Natalie, I ran into your sister at a conference." She told an interesting story about overcoming a major mistake. The timeline seemed off though. Didn't that happen after you two worked on different projects? The lie was spreading, and people were starting to notice the inconsistencies. I started paying attention to what Emma said at family gatherings after that. She'd always told the story loosely, vaguely, letting people fill in details themselves. But recently the story had evolved. She was adding specifics, creating dramatic moments, making herself the center of a redemption narrative. At my cousin's wedding last month, I overheard her talking to a group of relatives I didn't know well. "I was young and stupid," she was saying, twirling her champagne glass. "I made some really reckless choices with company money. The firm could have destroyed me, but I convinced them to let me make it right." Reckless. That was a new word. It implied impulsivity, youthful indiscretion, not the calculated theft it actually was. "And your sister?" someone asked. "Wasn't she involved somehow?" Emma's expression shifted, just slightly. "Natalie tried to cover for me at first. She meant well, but she made things worse. I had to step up and fix her mistake too." I stood frozen behind a flower arrangement, listening to my sacrifice being rewritten as my failure. She wasn't just taking credit for facing consequences anymore. She was making me the problem. That night I barely slept. The lie wasn't static anymore. It was evolving, growing, developing a life of its own. And I was being actively damaged by each new version Emma told. The original agreement was that she'd keep quiet, let it fade into the past. Now she was building a brand on it, polishing it for maximum impact, and I was becoming the villain in her story of redemption. I went to my parents' house on a Tuesday evening when I knew Emma wouldn't be there. My mother was making dinner, my father reading the newspaper in his chair, the picture of suburban contentment. "We need to talk about what happened 7 years ago," I said without preamble. My mother's hands stilled over the cutting board. My father lowered his newspaper slowly. "Natalie, this again." My father's voice carried warning. "Emma's telling people her version of the story," I continued. "But she's changing it, making me look bad. Making me look like I made things worse for her." My mother turned from the counter, her face tight. "That's just how she remembers it, sweetheart. Memory is subjective." Memory. I stared at her. She wasn't even there for half of what she's describing. I was the one who dealt with Morrison and Fletcher. I was the one who paid the money. She's remembering things that never happened because she's making them up. "Don't be dramatic," my father said. "I'm not being dramatic. I'm being erased." My voice rose despite my intention to stay calm. "Do you even know what this has cost me? The jobs I didn't get. The friends who pulled away. The relationships that ended because I couldn't explain the truth." My parents exchanged that look again. Finally my mother spoke. "We know, honey. We know it's been hard for you. But correcting the story now would destroy Emma's career. It would destroy our family. People would never look at her the same way." "What about how they look at me?" "You're stronger," my father said simply. "You can handle it. Emma's more fragile. She needs protection." I realized then that they'd always known exactly what they were asking me to sacrifice. They understood the cost, they just found it acceptable. I was the one paying, so they were fine with the price. I stopped explaining myself after that conversation. I stopped defending Emma to coworkers who mentioned her success. I stopped smoothing over family tensions when she said something that contradicted reality. I stopped being the person who absorbed everything to keep everyone else comfortable. At the next family dinner, Emma mentioned her difficult early career years in conversation. Usually I'd nod along or change the subject. This time I said nothing. I simply ate my food and let the silence stretch. Emma noticed. Her eyes flickered to me several times during the meal. After dinner, she cornered me in the hallway while I was getting my coat. "You're being weird," she said. "What's wrong with you lately?" "Nothing's wrong," I replied evenly. "I'm just tired of participating in certain conversations." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm done helping you tell your story." Her face went pale. "Natalie, you promised." "We all agreed." "No, you all decided." "I agreed because I thought it would protect you. But you're not protecting yourself anymore. You're performing." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." Pulled on my coat. "I'm not going to expose you, Emma. But I'm not going to keep lying for you either. Tell your story however you want, but leave me out of it." I walked past her, leaving her standing in the hallway with her mouth open. For the first time in 7 years I felt something close to relief. Emma showed up at my apartment 3 days later. I saw her through the peephole, pacing in the hallway, and considered not answering. But I opened the door. She pushed past me into my living room. "We need to talk." "Okay," I said, closing the door. "You're changing," she accused. "You're not acting like yourself. Everyone's noticed." "I'm acting exactly like myself. I'm just not acting like your safety net anymore." "That's not fair." Her voice cracked. "I never asked you to resent me. You never asked me anything. That was the problem." I sat down on my couch, suddenly exhausted. "You took what I gave and then took more. You built a career on my sacrifice and never once acknowledged what it cost me. I was young. I made a mistake. I've spent 7 years making up for it." "No, Emma. I spent 7 years making up for it. You spent 7 years pretending it didn't happen while simultaneously using it as your personal success story. She sat down across from me, tears forming in her eyes. I'd seen her cry before, seen her use tears to soften hearts and win arguments. It wouldn't work this time. What do you want from me? She whispered. I want you to stop telling the story. Or tell it honestly. But you can't keep building your reputation on a lie that's destroying mine. If I admit the truth now, I'll lose everything. Then stop talking about it. Let it fade away like you promised 7 years ago. Emma wiped her eyes, and when she looked up again, the tears were gone. In their place was something harder. I can't do that. This story is part of who I am now. It's how people know me. Then that's your choice, I said quietly. But I'm done protecting you from the consequences of that choice. She stood up. You're punishing me because you're jealous. You always have been. After she left, I sat in the silence of my apartment and felt strangely calm. The manipulation was surfacing, becoming visible, and I wasn't falling for it anymore. 2 weeks later, Emma called with a familiar panic in her voice. I need you to back me up on something. What? There's this potential client, huge account. They're doing background checks on the whole team. If the Morrison and Fletcher thing comes up, I need you to confirm that it was a misunderstanding, that the investigation found no wrongdoing. But that's not what happened. Natalie, please. This account could make my whole year. My whole career, honestly. 7 years ago I would have said yes immediately. 7 months ago I would have said yes reluctantly. But standing in my kitchen with the phone pressed to my ear, I felt something shift inside me. No, I said quietly. What? No. I'm not going to lie for you. You're seriously going to sabotage my career over some grudge? I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm just refusing to participate. There's a difference. Natalie, I'm begging you. Just this once. You said that 7 years ago. It was supposed to be just once then too. She was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was cold. I won't forget this. I know, I said and ended the call. I expected to feel guilty. I expected to second-guess myself, to reach for the phone and call her back with apologies and agreements. Instead, I felt lighter than I had in years. The word no without explanation, without drama, without negotiation, it was surprisingly powerful. The change in family dynamics was subtle at first. Emma stopped calling me directly, channeling all communication through our parents. At family gatherings, conversations would pause awkwardly when I entered a room. Then the comments started. Quiet observations passed from person to person, designed to reach my ears indirectly. Natalie seems stressed lately. I heard she's been difficult to work with. She's changed, not in a good way. My cousin Beth pulled me aside at a barbecue. Is everything okay with you? Emma mentioned you've been going through something. What did she say exactly? Beth looked uncomfortable. Just that you've been unstable, having some personal issues. She's worried about you. The tactic was familiar because I'd watched Emma deploy it before. When she couldn't control someone directly, she controlled the narrative around them. She made them seem unreliable, emotional, unstable. I'd protected her from people who noticed her patterns before. Now I was experiencing it firsthand. More whispers followed. At a work event, a colleague mentioned hearing I was dealing with family drama and emotional struggles. I traced the rumor back through mutual connections and found Emma at the source every time. She was preemptively discrediting me, making sure that if I did tell the truth, people would view it as vindictive jealousy rather than factual correction. It was strategic, calculated, and devastatingly effective. My father called. Emma says you're spreading rumors about her. That you're trying to damage her professionally. That's not true. Then why is she so upset? Why are people asking questions? Maybe because her story doesn't add up, I said. Maybe people are noticing the inconsistencies. Natalie, please. Don't do this to your sister. I hung up without responding. The family had chosen their side long ago. I was finally accepting it. The shift came from an unexpected source. Karen Martinez had been a family friend for 20 years, close to my mother since they'd worked together decades ago. She was at the barbecue where Beth had pulled me aside, and she'd been watching quietly. She called me a week later. "Can we meet for coffee? Just the two of us." We met at a cafe near my office. Karen ordered carefully, then looked at me with the direct gaze of someone who'd made a decision. "I need to tell you something, and you need to promise not to say where you heard it." "Okay. I was at lunch with your mother 3 weeks ago. She mentioned how proud she was of Emma for overcoming that early career mistake. But the timeline she described didn't match what Emma said at the barbecue last month." I stayed quiet, letting her continue. "Your mother said it happened 7 years ago, that you helped Emma through it. Emma told everyone at the barbecue it was 9 years ago, before you worked in finance. She said you tried to help but made things worse." "The timing matters," I said carefully. "It does when someone's building their reputation on a redemption story." Karen stirred her coffee slowly. "I've known your family long enough to recognize patterns. I watched you fade into the background while Emma shone. I always wondered why. She's more charismatic. She's more willing to take credit," Karen corrected. "There's a difference." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I don't know what really happened 7 years ago. But I know you're not the person Emma's been describing lately. And I'm not the only one noticing the contradictions." After Karen left, I sat in the cafe for a long time. I wasn't the only one seeing the cracks in Emma's story. The truth was becoming visible to people who were willing to look. I started telling my story. Not dramatically, not with accusations or anger. I simply stopped lying when people asked direct questions. When a coworker mentioned hearing about my ethical issues early in my career, I said calmly, "That situation was more complicated than it appeared. I took responsibility for something that wasn't entirely mine to protect someone else." When my cousin asked about the Morrison and Fletcher incident, I said, "The official story isn't complete. I made choices based on what I thought was right at the time, but I wasn't the only person involved. I didn't name Emma. I didn't need to. I just stopped participating in the fiction that I was solely responsible for something that had never been my mistake." The responses were interesting. People asked questions, wanted details, expressed surprise that there was more to the story. Some didn't believe me. Some clearly suspected Emma immediately. All of them started comparing notes, talking to each other, reconstructing timelines. My mother called, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. "What are you doing?" "I'm telling the truth. You're destroying your sister's reputation." "No, I'm correcting mine. There's a difference." People are asking Emma questions now. Direct questions about the timeline, about what really happened. She can't answer them. Then maybe she shouldn't have been telling the story in the first place. My mother was silent for a long moment. "Your father and I didn't raise you to be vindictive. You raised me to be honest," I replied. "I'm just finally following through." My parents invited me to dinner, just the 3 of us. Emma wasn't there, and the absence felt significant. "This needs to stop," my father said before I'd even sat down. "You're rewriting history." "I'm not rewriting anything. I'm correcting the version that's been told for 7 years." "You're making Emma look like a liar," my mother added. "Emma is a liar. She lied about what happened. She lied about who was responsible. She's been lying for 7 years, and I've been helping her do it." "You agreed to protect her," my father said. "I agreed to take the blame once so she could move forward. I didn't agree to let her turn my sacrifice into her success story. I didn't agree to be erased while she rewrote our past." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "Please, Natalie. Think about what you're doing. Think about the family. If this comes out, if people know the truth, Emma's career could be destroyed. Her reputation would never recover." "What about my reputation? What about my career? Did you ever think about that?" "You're established," my father said. "You're strong enough to weather this. Emma isn't. You keep saying that I'm strong enough, that I can handle it. But you never ask if I should have to. I stood up from the table. I'm not exposing Emma to hurt her. I'm telling the truth to free myself. If that damages her, it's because her success was always built on my silence. Don't do this before things get ugly, my mother pleaded. But things were already ugly. They'd been ugly for 7 years. I was just finally letting other people see it. Cleaning out my home office, I found the box. A cardboard file box I'd shoved in the back of my closet years ago. Too painful to look at but too important to throw away. Inside were the documents from Morrison and Fletcher. The settlement agreement with my signature. The payment receipts showing $8,000 transferred from my account. The termination letter from the consulting project I'd been working on when the scandal hit. There were also emails. Email exchanges with Emma where she thanked me for saving her life. Messages to our parents outlining exactly what I was sacrificing. A timeline I'd written down at the time, documenting everything in case I needed it later. I'd forgotten this box existed. 7 years of trying to move past the situation had buried it in my mind. But here it was, undeniable proof of what had actually happened. I didn't need to show it to anyone. I didn't need to make copies and distribute them like evidence in a trial. The existence of the documentation was enough. It meant I wasn't crazy. It meant my version of events wasn't revisionist history or selective memory. It meant I'd been telling the truth all along. I took a photo of the settlement agreement on my phone. Not to share, just to have. A reminder that I wasn't the person Emma had been describing to family and friends. I was the person who'd sacrificed too much for too long. And I was done apologizing for it. Emma's confidence became her downfall. At a family event the following month, she told the story again. But this time, emboldened by years of unchallenged retellings, she added even more details. The investigation was intense, she said to a group of relatives and family friends. Federal regulators got involved. I was terrified I'd face criminal charges. But I cooperated completely, took full responsibility, and eventually they saw that I was just young and inexperienced, not malicious. I watched from across the room. Federal regulators. That was new. Morrison and Fletcher had been a private firm dealing with an internal matter. There had been no federal investigation because there had been no need for one. Emma was adding dramatic elements that sounded good but didn't match reality. My Uncle Howard, who'd worked in financial regulation for 30 years, frowned. Which federal agency? CC doesn't usually get involved in private firm internal matters unless there's securities fraud. Emma hesitated just for a moment. I don't remember exactly. It was so stressful, everything blurred together. But you just said the investigation was intense, Howard pressed. You must remember who was investigating. It was 7 years ago, Emma said, her smile faltering. 9 years ago, I said quietly from across the room. You said last month it was 9 years ago. Every head turned. Emma's face went pale. It was 7, she said firmly. I know when it happened. You're right, I agreed. 7 years ago. The same year I moved into my current apartment. The same year I changed jobs from Hamilton Consulting because the Morrison and Fletcher situation affected my professional reputation. 9 years ago, you were still in college. The inconsistencies hung in the air. People started doing the math in their heads, remembering conversations, comparing dates. Emma looked at me with desperate eyes, expecting me to smooth it over, to rescue her like I always had. I smiled and took a sip of my drink. My cousin Tyler, who'd been so impressed by Emma's story at the gathering months ago, asked the question that changed everything. Emma, if federal regulators were involved, there would be public records, right? I could look up the case. It was settled privately, Emma said quickly. But federal investigations are matters of public record, Howard interjected. Even if the settlement was private, the investigation itself would be documented. I really don't want to talk about this anymore, Emma said, her voice tight. You're the one who brought it up, Tyler pointed out. You've been talking about it for years. Emma's eyes found mine across the room. She looked at me with an expression I recognized from childhood, the silent plea for intervention. When we were kids, I'd step in when she faced consequences for broken rules. When we were teenagers, I'd cover when she missed curfew. 7 years ago, I'd taken the blame for her theft. This time I looked away. I just think, Tyler continued slowly, if you're telling this story to potential clients, to people in your professional network, you should make sure the details are accurate. You don't want someone fact-checking and finding inconsistencies. There are no inconsistencies, Emma insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. My father cleared his throat loudly. I think that's enough of this topic for one evening. But it wasn't enough. People kept talking in small groups after that, comparing what they remembered, noting the differences between this version and past versions. The confident narrative Emma had built was developing cracks, and everyone could see them. Emma found me in the kitchen later, while I was refilling my drink. You did this on purpose. I didn't do anything. I just didn't stop it. You've been waiting for this. Planning it. No, Emma. I've been exhausted by it. There's a difference. I turned to face her. You expected me to jump in and save you. You've always expected that. But I'm tired of being your backup plan. They're going to figure it out, she whispered. They're going to realize I lied. You did lie. Because you left me no choice. Her voice rose. If I admitted the truth, if I said you took the blame for me, I would have looked weak. I would have looked like the sister who needed saving. So you decided to look like the sister who faced her mistakes while I looked like the one who made them. I didn't mean for it to go this far. But you never stopped it. You kept telling the story, kept polishing it, kept using it to build your brand. You turned my sacrifice into your achievement. What was I supposed to do? She asked desperately. The same thing you're demanding from me now. Face the consequences of your own choices. I walked out of the kitchen. Behind me, I heard her starting to cry. The sound followed me down the hallway, but I didn't turn back. For the first time in 7 years, her tears wouldn't change my mind. The narrative collapsed slowly, then all at once. People started talking, comparing notes, asking questions. My cousin Beth called to apologize for believing Emma's whispers about me being unstable. Karen Martinez admitted she'd suspected for years that Emma's story didn't add up. Most tellingly, my Uncle Howard did exactly what Tyler had suggested. He looked up federal regulatory records. He checked SEC filings. He found nothing connected to Emma or Morrison and Fletcher 7 years ago, because there had been nothing to find. He called my father. I don't know what actually happened with Emma's early career situation, but the story she's been telling isn't accurate. The federal investigation she described never existed. My father tried to defend her. Maybe she misremembered some details. You don't misremember whether federal agents questioned you, Howard replied. The conversations multiplied. Emma's friends started hearing different versions from different people and asking for clarification. Her co-workers questioned why her redemption story kept changing. The client she'd asked me to lie for found the inconsistencies during their background check and pulled the account entirely. Emma stopped coming to family gatherings. My mother called me in tears. Are you satisfied now? Your sister is humiliated. People are questioning everything she says. I didn't humiliate her. She did this to herself by not being able to keep her story straight. You could have stopped this. You could have backed her up. I spent 7 years backing her up. I sacrificed my reputation, my career opportunities, my peace of mind. I'm done paying for her mistakes. My parents begged me to make a statement, to clarify things, to somehow smooth over the damage. But the damage wasn't mine to repair. Emma showed up at my apartment again, but this time she wasn't angry or manipulative. She was broken. Everyone knows, she said, collapsing on my couch. Not the whole truth, but enough. They know I've been lying about something. They just don't know what. I sat across from her, waiting. I needed that story, she continued, tears streaming down her face. I needed to be the person who overcame something, who learned and grew. Without it, I was just Emma who made mistakes. With it, I was Emma who faced consequences and came out stronger. But the consequences weren't yours. The growth wasn't real. I know. She wiped her eyes. I convinced myself it didn't matter. The lesson was the same whether I learned it the hard way or learned it by watching you. But it does matter, doesn't it? Yes. You really did this. You really destroyed everything I built. No, Emma. I stopped lying. There's a difference. I leaned forward. You betrayed me 7 years ago when you let me take the blame. You betrayed me every time you told that story as your own. You betrayed me when you started making me the villain in your redemption narrative. I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped building it for you. She cried for a long time while I sat in silence. Finally, she looked up at me. What do I do now? You tell the truth. The real one. You face the actual consequences of what actually happened. I'll lose everything. Maybe. Or maybe you'll finally build something real. I stood up. But that's your choice to make, not mine. After she left, I felt strangely empty. Not triumphant, not vindicated. Just tired and relieved in equal measure. My parents finally admitted it out loud 3 days later. They came to my apartment together, looking older than I remembered. We asked too much of you, my mother said, sitting on my couch where Emma had been. 7 years ago when we asked you to protect Emma, we knew it would cost you. We just didn't think about how much. You thought it was worth it, I said. We thought Emma needed more protection, my father corrected. She always seemed more fragile. You were always so capable, so strong. Being capable doesn't mean I should have to carry other people's consequences. We know that now. My mother's voice broke. We've spent the last week watching Emma fall apart, watching our family fracture. We thought we were protecting her, but we were just enabling her to avoid growing up. What do you want from me? Yes. Forgiveness, my father said simply. We're sorry. We made the wrong choice 7 years ago, and we kept making it every time we asked you to stay quiet. I thought about the last 7 years. The opportunities lost, the relationships damaged, the exhaustion of maintaining a lie that benefited everyone except me. I thought about Emma building a career on my sacrifice while I struggled to rebuild my reputation. I forgive you, I said finally. But I'm not going to fix this for you. I'm not going to go to Emma and make things right, or tell the family to forget everything, or smooth over the consequences. You made choices. She made choices. Now you all get to live with them. That's fair, my mother whispered. They left quietly, and I realized forgiveness didn't mean restoration. It just meant I was letting go of the anger I'd carried for so long. The freedom was subtle but profound. I stopped editing myself at family gatherings, stopped worrying about saying the wrong thing or revealing the wrong detail. I stopped carrying the weight of Emma's reputation on my shoulders. My career shifted. Colleagues who'd heard the whispers about my ethical issues now heard the fuller story about sacrificing my reputation for family. Some respected it. Some thought I was foolish. All of them saw me differently, as someone with agency rather than someone with a questionable past. I started taking opportunities I'd avoided before. I applied for a position at a larger firm, one that required extensive background checks. When they asked about Morrison and Fletcher, I told the truth. Not the bitter version, just the factual one. I took responsibility for something that wasn't mine to protect my sister, and I've learned a lot about boundaries since then. They hired me anyway. The position came with a significant raise and my own team to manage. Emma faced her own reckoning. Her marketing firm conducted an internal review after the client pulled their account, questioning her judgment and honesty. She wasn't fired, but she was placed on probation. Her next promotion was indefinitely postponed. She could have lied more, could have tried to reconstruct the narrative, but she didn't. She issued a quiet statement at work admitting she'd been imprecise about past situations and would be more careful moving forward. It wasn't a full confession, but it was acknowledgement. My mother called to tell me about it. Emma's learning to be accountable, she said. It's hard for her. It was hard for me too, I replied. But I did it anyway. The consequences for Emma weren't as dramatic as she'd feared. She didn't lose everything. She lost trust, which proved harder to rebuild than reputation. Colleagues questioned her claims now, double-checked her assertions. Clients were more cautious. Family members maintained polite distance. She called me one evening, her voice small. I ran into Amanda Chan at a conference. She asked me directly about the Morrison and Fletcher situation. What did you tell her? The truth. That you took the blame for something I did, and I'd let you carry it for 7 years. I paused. She said she respected the honesty. Not what I did, but the fact that I finally admitted it. That's something. It's not enough. Some people will never trust me again. Probably not, I agreed. Trust is easier to lose than to rebuild. But that's the consequence of lying. I know. I'm learning that the hard way. She was quiet for a moment. I don't expect you to help me through this. I don't expect you to make a statement on my behalf or vouch for my character. I know I don't deserve that. You're right. But I wanted you to know I'm trying. I'm actually trying to be the person I always pretended to be. After we hung up, I realized I believed her. Not because she'd earned back my trust, but because facing real consequences had a way of creating real growth. The kind she'd claimed to have 7 years ago was finally beginning now. My final boundary came when Emma asked me to issue a public statement. She'd crafted something careful, explaining that the Morrison and Fletcher situation had been complicated, that family dynamics had created a difficult situation where I'd made sacrifices to protect her. It doesn't name you as the guilty party, she explained. It just clarifies that I wasn't entirely honest about my role in resolving things. It makes you look generous instead of compromised. No, I said simply. Natalie, please. This could help us both. It could help repair your reputation. My reputation is fine now. I don't need your statement to validate my truth. Then do it for me, please. It would show people I'm trying to make amends. Making amends isn't about crafting the perfect public statement. It's about living differently, choosing honesty, building trust through action. You don't need me to make that statement. You just need to stop lying. You're punishing me. No, I'm declining to participate in your rehabilitation. There's a difference. I spent 7 years helping you build a false image. I'm not going to spend another 7 helping you repair it. She left angry, but I felt peaceful. The power shift was complete and irreversible. I wasn't the person who absorbed damage anymore. I wasn't the sister who sacrificed herself for family harmony. I was just myself, clear-eyed and free. Walking away from Emma's drama felt like shedding a heavy coat I'd forgotten I was wearing. My life expanded in ways I hadn't anticipated. I made new friends who knew me without the shadow of Morrison and Fletcher. I dated someone who appreciated my boundaries instead of questioning them. I took risks at work I'd avoided before. Emma faced consequences, real ones this time. Her career didn't end, but it stalled. Her relationships required constant maintenance as she rebuilt trust slowly. Our parents stopped intervening on her behalf and started requiring her to handle her own problems. She was learning, finally, what accountability actually meant. Our family changed too. We were smaller, quieter, less performatively perfect. Holiday gatherings were honest instead of harmonious. We acknowledged problems instead of smoothing them over. It was uncomfortable but genuine. I saw Emma occasionally, at family events we couldn't avoid. We were cordial, careful, no longer close. She'd lost me as her shield, and the adjustment had been painful for her. But she was surviving it. One evening, nearly a year after the story unraveled, Emma texted me, "Thank you." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. For what? For stopping. For refusing to keep lying. I'm finally becoming someone real instead of someone performed. I didn't respond immediately. Finally I typed, "You're welcome." It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't restoration of our former relationship. But it was acknowledgement. She understood now what I'd understood for years. Silence can protect others, but only truth protects yourself. I closed my phone and looked out my apartment window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Emma was learning to live without the safety net I'd provided. Somewhere, my parents were learning that enabling wasn't the same as loving. Somewhere, I was finally fully myself. The lie that had defined 7 years of my life was gone. In its place was something harder but infinitely more valuable. The truth, messy and complicated and entirely mine.